Good evening, Brian.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jerry. Good evening, Miriam. Today, I'm excited. We're going to talk about the last two parashot of the book of Exodus. We're leaving Exodus, and it's about Moses, who is repeating. You're going to notice what we'll do is we'll read the first few verses, but because so much is a repetition, I made a decision to do something a little different today, and then we can have a longer period of discussion afterwards. I found a message from my rabbi from 6 years ago. At the beginning of every week, I listen to some of his messages from the past, and because for me, he was my best teacher. I've had many teachers in my life. You know, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think they say that in Buddhism. And I've noticed that in my life, that when I was ready to learn something new, when I saw that the train I was on was leading me on the wrong track, I got off the track and got on a new train. And now that I'm 75 years old, you know, I'm on a very different train. I'm not sure that this is the last train, but who knows?
To Clarksville.
The last train.
Last train to Clarksville.
To Clarksville, exactly. But this is Moses. Moses is trying to tell us. He's urging us to listen the way he's going to do in the entire book of Deuteronomy. Next week, we're going to start a new book, Vayakhel, which is only 1 month long for the whole book. In this case, in Exodus, we're going through a 2-year period. This takes place in the last, at the time of Pesach. We're entering the time of Pesach, and so is this portion. We'll be entering the time of Pesach at the time they were still at Mount Sinai. They hadn't picked up and left yet. So now they're about to go through their journeys. And so I'm going to share the screen. Hang on a second, and we're gonna start by reading it. And then so here we're at Exodus.
Make it a little larger.
Make it larger. All right. I'll make it a little larger.
But bring it down a bit because it comes.
Brian, you're going to have to fix. Listen, monsieur. You're going to have to take away the the pictures, because I can't accommodate everybody's computer.
Because I don't have it like on the computer. I don't have that thing on the computer.
I understand. So here we're going to see that the portion begins with the first verse. It's in 30. Hold on a second. It's verse 30. I think it wasn't 1. It's verse. Oh.
And this position is good.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, it's 30 verse 1. Okay. Hold on a second. It's why does it look different in mine? I'm sorry. I'm all mishkabibble here. Oh, that's why I'm on the wrong verses. Okay, I have to go to 35 verse 1. Here. It's too big this way. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to make it smaller because it just doesn't. There we go. So you can listen, Bri. And Moses assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel and said to them, "These are the words which the Lord has commanded, that you should do them." So he's really adamant. He's speaking to the children of Israel. He knows we're about to head out. Our lives are going to change. And he begins with the most important of all the commandments, which is the 4th commandment. It says, 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day shall be to you a Yom Kadosh. It's going to be a holy day, a day of solemn rest to the Lord, Whoever does any work in it shall be put to death. Now, do you think that that's literal? What do you think, Jer? Are we?
It's hard to tell. I wasn't there at the time, and I wouldn't want to make a comment on that. It could be, it could not be. It could be in a certain sense, in a different, not necessarily physical or different sense. It could have many connotations.
Yes, but that's the beauty of Hebrew, that it does. In my understanding, and I can only give my opinion on these things. Of course, you're going to get many, many opinions from the rabbis, but when it talks about death, it doesn't only mean a physical death. Sometimes there's a spiritual death when you're cut off from a community of people, especially in those days. It can refer to those days. If they're cut off from their community, they die. But there's a spiritual death that happens as well. And a physical, if we don't rest, if we don't take a day off and give one day back to God, if we're not covered by him, if we're not being obedient to him, many people do die sooner. There is something about a health factor in here, but it's also, it's like when you obey God, he shows himself, he shows up in so many areas of our life. It's absolutely astounding. And I've seen that in my own life. Then it says, you shall kindle no fire throughout your house.
Sorry, Peggy.
Yes.
Just one thing. Do you know if there's a different word for physical death and a kind of a, let's say, spiritual death? Or
No, the word here is umat. Umat is death. Death is death. It's the same word for physical or spiritual.
Well, there's another word. I don't know the word offhand, Peggy. It's called they say that soul shall be cut off.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the word is.
Yes, but that's different.
I guess the reason I'm asking is because in one way, when you say whoever does this work there at that point shall be put to death.
But that's an English translation, because if you read the Hebrew, it doesn't say that. It says malacha, which is work, yamat. It just says, it's like they are giving that translation, but it's not necessarily what.
I wonder what another translation, a better one would be.
Well, I think that it's the idea. It's almost like saying work, no work, death. That's, but definitely this is something that can be researched. Kol ha'aseh, to do, bo. I'm not sure bo here, bo malach, whoever does work will die. It's like that's so this is a translation that isn't maybe not the best. It's not that God is going to kill anybody. We are suffering the consequences of our behavior, and that could come in many ways.
Right.
That's my understanding. And here, that you shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Shabbat is, again, it's today the Orthodox have, and even then, I'm not sure how he thought of that, but today they say, well, that's why we can't drive on Shabbat, because when you start your engine, you're lighting a fire, and that's why they won't start a stove on Shabbat. But I do not believe that that's what God meant because if you look at what happened in the Mishkan and in the temple, they had to kindle fire on the Shabbat. So it has nothing to do with kindling the fire, but maybe it could do.
Start the fire before the Shabbos.
Yeah, but that's according to the religious. But here, look what it says: in your habitations. God wanted us to come together as a community, to come, like not to, and usually the fires were kindled in order to do work. It had, because it comes right after you shall do no work. So you remember when he supplied us, when he supplied us the manna, he told the people, I'm going to supply enough for you on Friday, so that you don't have to go out on Saturday. You're going to have enough for 2 days. But people still went out on the Shabbat. What he's showing us is that be obedient. Do not do anything that I tell you to not to do on the Shabbat. And it doesn't say anything that you can't cook, but you can't work. The whole thing had to do with doing work. That is my understanding. Of course, other people will have their understanding, and it's up to people to, but we have to take things in context. Jerry, what do you think about that?
Well, different people make their own rules, you know.
Yes.
Or to put it mildly, they make their own interpretations, if you like.
Exactly. But we have to look at what is it saying. Let me see. Bechol mishpotechem. Mishpacha, is this from Mishpacha? Mishbotechem. Do you know what that means, Jer? Beyom HaShabbat.
Where you were living, or where you're, I don't know what it means, where you were living.
You shall kindle no fire where you're living on the Sabbath. Miriam, what do you think about this?
I'm trying to think that the principle behind it. I mean, there's a difference between working and your daily routine, and you're getting paid, whether it's through cattle or however. What you said last week about salary, there's a difference between that and not living. Like, you can't stop the things that are necessary for you to live, like to eat, etc. But you're not going to do what you do during the week. So I guess it's meant to say that don't be so literal, like to understand it's a different kind of, you're not working the same way as you would during the week, but you need a fire to make food. So I don't think it means don't make any fire. It means don't continuously do things that require fire.
Well, remember, in that day, they, where they were here in the desert. They were at the base of Mount Sinai. They had, they had put up their tents where they were living. They were all assembled together. They weren't living in cities. They weren't going out to go to work. So the fires would be lit for those people who were doing, they were in the midst of building the Mishkan. So, and they were all doing work toward the Mishkan. So God doesn't, on that day, they weren't going to do work. They were going to, they were going to do what was necessary to spend time with each other, with their families, not to take their attention away from the Creator on that day, but give it full attention on that day. This is my understanding of what it's saying. Mm-hmm. And Moses spoke to the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, "This is the thing that the Lord has created. Take from among you an offering to the Lord. Whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it." So we're going to see here whoever's of a willing heart. Now, in another version that I have, is this verse? No, this is later on. The idea of a willing heart is extremely important to God. Whoever has a willing heart, don't bring it with a sense of, oh, look what I've got to give away. God wants us to be open, because everything He has provided us. He gives us everything. So when we give something, let it bring us willingly, or don't bother to bring it. The Lord's offering gold is the highest of value, and then it starts to go down. Silver, brass, blue, purple, all these things we read about. The ram skins, all the skins that were used to build the Mishkan, the oils, the spices, the stones for the ephod. 10, let every wise-hearted man, remember God makes us wise. He's the one who put the gifts within us. Let him come and make all that the Lord has commanded. God, and here the next verses are about building the tabernacle, its tenth, the ark, the table, all the things, the menorah, all the things that were the hangings, the pins of the tabernacle, the garments for ministering. So he's going through all this again. Before God was telling Moses what to do, and now Moses is telling the people what God told him that they had to do. And all the congregation of the children of Israel left the presence, and they came. This I love. And they came. Everyone whose heart stirred him up, everyone whose spirit made him willing. And they brought the Lord's offering for the work of the tent of meeting, for all the service and the holy garments. And then again, and they came, both men and women, as many as were willing. They brought their nose rings and earrings and signet rings and belts and jewels of gold. Every man who brought an offering of gold to the Lord. And again, it says, and every man brought them, all the linens, the goats, everyone set apart an offering of silver and brass, brought the Lord's offerings. All the women who were wise-hearted spun with their hands. See, these things were done at home. They were doing this, and they brought it. And the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair. That would be the covering for the outside of the Mishkan. The rulers, the leaders, it says in Hebrew, Nisim, the princes of the people, they brought the stones, the precious stones, the onyx for the ephod and the breastplate, the spice, the oil, the anointing oil. When I read that, I said, wow. And I guess for me, it's especially moving because when there are projects that I know to do within our congregation and I ask for help, I can't say, and they came, because very few come, very few are willing. That's what I appreciate so much about Miriam, because when I call her up, I said, Miriam, come on, we have to do something. I could say, and Miriam came. She's willing.
Yeah.
And
thank God.
Yeah, honestly, thank God. And that's why
I'm much better than I used to be. Let's put it that way.
And that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
And the children of Israel brought a freewill offering to the Lord, every man and every woman whose heart made them willing to bring for all the work which the Lord has commanded by the hand of Moses to be made. And then he's going to start naming who they are. We see the name of Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Ur, of the tribe of Yehudah, of Judah. And I love this. He filled him with his spirit, in wisdom, in understanding, in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship. So he gives us our gifts. Like Jerry, when you read a poem, you read it like a Shakespearean actor. That's a gift. Miriam has so many gifts when she writes and when she does her art. Even when she sings, she has many gifts. When she goes out to help others, these are gifts, and God has given those to us. It's like it's in our ruach. Here, the word is ruach. It's like he's breathed his ruach into us, and they would make the works in gold and silver. Again, all the things that were going to be put into the Mishkan. He's repeating this. And he put in his heart that he may teach both this was Bezalel, and now he's going to do the same thing with another gentleman named Oholiav, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan. Them he filled with the wisdom of heart, to work all manner of workmanship, of craftsmen, the skillful workmen. You know, Jerry, you told me how you used to, how you devised a system where you fix teeth and you would make the teeth in a person's mouth look so beautiful at a quarter of the cost that they would pay. That was a gift, you know, and the weaver in colors in blue and purple of everything that devised skillful works. And when you did that, you made people happy. And Bezalel and Aholiab shall work. Every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord has put wisdom and understanding. So God puts, you know, when I don't know what to do, I ask God for wisdom. And something happens. Either someone will call me, or I'll speak to someone, or I'll read something, and I know what to do. It's like, or a thought will come. And he gives us understanding to know how to work, all the work for the service of the sanctuary, according to all that the Lord has commanded. This is so powerful for me.
Don't forget, remember when we were in the car and we're talking about you, Brian, and how you just have such an understanding of how things work. Like, I don't even understand how you acquire that knowledge, but how you realize how a TV works, and how a toaster, and how a different computer, like, you know what I mean? You have such a sense of mechanical, like God put that in you, you know.
He knows a lot, just like right now when before we began, Jerry was reading a poem and singing a song, and he asked which sounded better. And Brian knew that if you have a carpet on the floor, it's not going to reflect the sound as well. That's
Right.
why they put padding on the walls and inside of rooms to reflect sound better. Sometimes the ceiling will reflect sound better than other places.
Right.
And Moses called Bezalel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man. See, they were going to be the leaders, but they weren't going to do all the work. Every wise-hearted man. So there were others in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom. Everyone, I love this, everyone whose heart stirred him up to come to do the work. It's like sometimes you can't help but do what you do because it's who God made you. And when we find the things that God has called us to do, when we can't help but do it, that's when we have fulfillment and joy in our lives.
Well, you know the joke about, I joke with you sometimes, and somebody was talking about this with me years ago, that if you were put on an island, you would be driven to, however, you would count the sand, you would you would have meetings with the fish and the crabs, like you would be doing something to get mobilized something on the island.
I always get things moving, that's for sure. I if I don't have a project, I find a project. But these are it's God put that in me, and it's like I can't take credit. It just happens. And I see that with other people that I know. And all the wise men who did all the work for the sanctuary, they came. Every man from the work that he had wrought, that he made. He brought the things to build the Mishkan. Perhaps that's why it talked about that not to build a fire in their habitations for work, because they worked their things at home and they brought them in. They spoke to Moses. The people bring much more than enough for the service of the Lord, of the work which the Lord commanded to make. And Moses gave an order, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp. Let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing. Imagine if you had to tell people to stop bringing because there was so much. That's what God put on the heart of our people. For the stuff they had was sufficient for all the work to make it, and it was too much. Isn't that amazing? And today, like, you have to beg people to do things. And every wise-hearted man among them that wrought the work made the tabernacles. Now it's going to go into all the details. So I didn't want to go into reading all the details again, because it's going to go through this for the next 2 parashot. And we can go to the end of the last parashot afterwards. But I found a message that our rabbi had given to us in 5777, which was 6 years ago. And if you'll give me permission, I would just like to read what he said in a way that could give us an understanding of how all this applies to our life. Because really, how do we apply all that we've heard in this book of Exodus to our lives today? And this is what he said. The book of Exodus set the stage for such a paradigm shift in their way of thinking. This is the children of Israel. One of the most difficult things for us as humans is to change our minds. Some of us are too stubborn. Some of us think we know everything. Some people are just too proud. Some people are too religious. They think, I would never do that. Some don't know that they can do it. Some people just say, I will never surrender. And that is a dangerous thing. We always have to be open, no matter how old we are, to a shift in our paradigm. Now, everybody, you know what a paradigm is, right? Jerry, you know what a paradigm is?
I never knew what it was. It's like a model of something, but I don't really understand it.
Let me give you a picture of what a paradigm is. There was a man who had 3 children, and he was going home on the subway with his 3 young children. And the children were running wild. They were bothering everybody. They were yelling. They were screaming. They were just out of control. And one woman was sitting there, and she kept thinking, what rotten children these are. What is wrong with their father? Why doesn't he discipline them? He was just sitting there with his head hung down, doing nothing about his children. And finally, she couldn't take it anymore, and she went over to him. And she said, excuse me, sir, your children are disturbing everyone. Could you please do something about it? We can't take it anymore. And he looked up at her, and he kind of like shook his head, and he said, I'm so sorry. We just came back from the hospital. Their mother just passed away. And her whole paradigm shifted. She had ideas of why this had happened. And once she understood, she was able to change her judgment of the whole scenario. And sometimes we've been given ideas about who we are, about our behavior. From when we're very young, we're taught to believe that we're a certain way. And we need to learn to be more open to maybe changing our paradigms, to thinking, well, I thought I couldn't do this, but maybe I can. Let's give it a shot. But in this situation, Miriam, you look like you were going to say something. You had unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Okay, so let me continue. So the creator here in this scenario of us leaving Egypt was setting up a weaning process for the people of Israel, and it would take them time to change. Remember, the Israelites had been living in Egypt, where idolatry had been part of their everyday life. They would slowly now be transitioning from the heavy drug of idolatry, in the same way that a heroin addict is given methadone in decreasing doses so that they can be weaned away from the addiction of heroin. The heroin is not taken away immediately from the addict. And the same way, God didn't just remove all the idolatry from our brains, but he led us, because remember, God gave us free will. He wants us to be able to make choices. He wants us to be able to understand when we do things, we need to, it has to be coming from us. Even what we read before, when we brought something, it needed to be with a willing heart. We needed to choose to give, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. And God puts that in our hearts. He makes us willing. So by having the people build the Mishkan in such detail, the Creator would step by step be replacing the paraphernalia that had been attached to their lives of idolatry. And now they would slowly turn their gaze from those magnificent elements in Egypt to the ones here in the Mishkan that pointed to him. So away from the idols that pointed to him. The paraphernalia remained almost the same, but the vision would be different. The people of Israel had looked upon all these with awe, and who wouldn't be attracted to them? I remember going to see a temple once with all its gold. It was a Hindu temple in my New Age days, and it was an awesome thing. You just went, wow, you just couldn't, you go into a big shrine and you see the magnificence, but these things were all filled with idols. And that's what we were used to, having idols that we could feel, that we could touch. Now, remember, Israel was immature, like a child who wants to touch everything. But now they were being asked to accept an invisible, transcendental God who they could not see or touch. Even Moses cried out to God to show him his face. See, Moses had been well indoctrinated in the idols of Egypt. He worked in the court. He grew up in the court of Pharaoh. Even he asked God, show me your face. It's not an easy thing to believe in an invisible God. The first thing our Creator told them, do not make any images of him in order to bow down and worship. No images of any animals. Now, before we started, I showed you a little statue that I bought of a frog. And I love this little frog, but I don't worship it. So it's not, again, about the statue. It's about my paradigm, my understanding of it. You'll go into many Orthodox homes, they won't have any paintings on the wall or anything that makes it interesting to look at, like any of these statues, because they believe that's what God is meaning. It's not what he's saying. Don't make images to worship it. Don't desire these things more than you would desire him. Now, God was showing us that he is the God of history, the true God who brought us out of the land of Egypt, that brought them out, and it would take courage and time for the people of Israel to adjust to this new way of seeing things. Now, later, we're going to learn about the difference between the sacrifice to the gods of Egypt and the sacrificial offerings to the God of Israel, where again, they're both offerings, but the focus is in a different place.
So,
Again,
Peggy,
yes.
to continue on this, according to your story, so it's paradigm for me was like a model. So I'm coming up with something else now. So it's you're saying your perspective. And
Yes.
now I'm coming up with another word. Maybe you can say a few words on it since you're so versed in it. So it's your frame of mind. How is that?
Yes, your frame of mind, your way of thinking. It's like
You'll expand a little bit from the model to the frame. Say a little bit more, because I never really understood that paradigm shift and all that type of stuff. Okay, go ahead if you can.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, many years ago, I was taking courses at at the International Center for Hypnotism. I was learning how to do hypnosis. And one of the things that I had learned, I remember hearing this, is that you could take two people who become sick and they go to a doctor, and the doctor will say to one of them, to both of them, you have 6 months to live. One of them has a way of thinking, an attitude. Say, that's ridiculous. I don't believe that. I'm going to find another way. I want to live, and I'm going to do everything I can to live. The other one goes home crying, I'm going to be dead in 6 months. And everything he does for that next 6 months is leading him to his death. Now, I know that only God can take our lives, but we also have free will in how we live. And when you choose to believe something that somebody told you that creates a paradigm in your way of thinking, and you live by that, like if someone says to you when you're very young, oh, or you hear your parents always saying, oh, he's so shy, or, oh, he's so stupid. Oh, this child will never learn. He's so stubborn. And that child believes that about himself. He formulates a concept of his personality, of who he is, and that will act out through the rest of his life. And I've had to battle many of those paradigms during my time of walking with God, where all of a sudden it would come to me, that's not the truth about who I am. And I would start to make changes in my life. They would almost come simultaneously to the moment that I understood that that's not the way it has to be. Does that make some things clearer?
Yes, it's. I understand that, and I think I know a person like that. There's you have two children, two different families, exactly the same talents each one. One is encouraged, and the other one is discouraged. And it's very, very important how your family will encourage you. Not always. It's not always the case, because not in every case you could be discouraged, and you can still rise above it, and you can be encouraged, and so it's not 100%, but certainly how you're brought up is very, very, very important.
Absolutely, because even I remember, I come from a very musical family. My parents had beautiful voices, both of them. They were very talented. My mother could play the piano. I had a lot of people who played the piano, but I was never encouraged. When I took piano lessons, I could almost still hear my mother's voice from the kitchen. Whenever I would make a mistake, she would go, like, she couldn't, like, I could still feel like a judgment. And I hate practicing when anybody's listening to me, because if I make a mistake, I feel bad about it. I've had to work on that. Whenever I sing, even going into a concert, I'm nervous before every concert, because I think, what if they don't like how I sound? What if they don't like my voice? I still struggle with that to this very day, but I don't allow it to stop me, because little by little, I've been more encouraged, but it's so strong in us. And those are the type of things that we have to understand. That's what, when I learned about what hypnosis is, hypnosis has to do with the suggestion. People are suggestible, some less, some more, but we all are victims, you could say, of the power of suggestion, which is why companies will pay millions of dollars to put an ad on the board during a hockey game or a football game. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all these companies. You see a bag of chips, immediately it's a suggestion. You want to go get some chips. We are very suggestible creatures, but we have to learn. That's why it says, I remember reading, this was from the New Testament, actually. Now, it's not that I believe in the New Testament, but there is wisdom in many writings. And it says, take your thoughts captive, meaning When you have a thought, grab it, see if it's real, see if it's true. Why am I believing this? Don't just decide that something is true because you were told it. And that's really important, to learn. There's many stories, many other stories that I can think of.
Also, we live in a society that has a paradigm so kind of imposed on us, but there is a paradigm in everything in our life now, even sexuality and everything, so in classrooms, the things that are taught, that all reflects a paradigm, and it's scary sometimes that you can't really exercise your rights to have your own beliefs, because the people are persecuted for even teaching certain things.
Exactly. So to get back to this, does that satisfy your question, Jerry?
Well, we're going to get there. I've been working on paradigm for many, many years. There's a few words in the English language I just can't absorb, Paradigm is one of them. There's a few other little words that, I know them for a long time, but
Yeah, it's a way of thinking. Like there's another story about how a young couple got married and they were all excited. They were madly in love and they wanted to cook their first dinner together. And they decided to go out and buy a roast, just like Bubby made. So they bought the roast and they put it on the counter, and, they're preparing it. They put the spices on, and then the wife takes the two ends of the roast and cuts them off. And she's getting ready to throw them out. And her husband, her new husband, her young husband said, "What are you doing? That meat was expensive." And she says, he says, "Why are you doing that?" He says, "I don't know. That's the recipe. My bubby gave it to my mother and she gave it to me." So he says, "Do me a favor. Let's call your mother and let's find out why she's cutting off the ends of the roast." So she called her mother, and her mother's explained the story. And her mother says, "I don't know why. Bubby's in the next room. Let me ask her." So they call in the Bubby, and they said, "Bubby, why did you cut off the ends of the roast?" Well, she says, "My day, we were very poor and the pan was too small, so I had to cut off the ends of the roast." So sometimes we do things because others have taught us that's what we need to do.
Well, remember the Flat Earth Society? People who believe that the earth is flat. It's a whole paradigm. It influences everything you do and everything.
Exactly. And that's why the Torah is so important, because one of the things that we learn from the Bible is that the earth was round.
Right.
No matter what the others said, the truth for all humanity lies in the words of this book that we are reading. So let me continue. Why wouldn't the Creator have waved his magic wand and immediately removed from them all that they had learned in Egypt? He could have done that. He could change our brains. The answer to this is what he had given humanity, the gift of Bechirat Chofshit, free will. He has a great respect for us as his creation, and he didn't want us to be robots. He wanted us to willingly choose him, to choose to follow him, to listen to him, to obey him for our good, not for his. Now here we're finding ourselves at the end of the book of Exodus. We saw the formation of the people of Israel, how they were freed from slavery in Egypt. They had witnessed many miracles already before even they were going to begin the next 40 years in the desert, or 38 years. They were brought to the base of Mount Sinai, where they would receive the greatest gift that they could ever have, the 10 Commandments, and were given, at this time, we were given our purpose, our role. And now after the sin of the golden calf, the Creator told them to build a Mishkan, this tent of meeting, where he would dwell now among betocham, among the people. Before this, he would simply have continued to dwell in their hearts, as I believe, as he believed, our rabbi, that God is doing today. He dwells in and around us. He's everywhere. And now here's a beautiful little short story about relating this to our modern day. Just like the couple I told you before. There was a young couple, they were engaged, and they decided to live together before the wedding. They began to buy everything that they needed for the new apartment, make it beautiful, and then they set the date for the wedding. The groom told the bride that he had to go away on a business trip. And before he left, he was giving her a framed picture of his written vows of love to her. She was to keep them on display and keep them close to her heart. He put these up on the living room wall, and she accepted them as their deep commitment to one another. Then he left on the trip, and while she was preparing the house, an old flame of hers shows up. He found out about her future husband, but that he was away on the business trip. And during this time, he began to try to woo her away, to woo her back. He sent her flowers. He sent her love letters. Now, the groom couldn't contact her, and he was away for over a month and a half. And she began to fear that he was never coming back. In a moment of weakness and desperation, she had an affair with her old flame. Just at that moment, the groom returns and finds them together. In a fit of rage, he took the framed vows from the wall, he broke it, and he tore it into shreds. He grabbed the boyfriend and destroyed him. The bride broke down, weeping, sorry for what she had done, crying out that she didn't know that he was ever going to come back. She begged for his forgiveness. The groom took pity on the bride and said that he would renew their vows. However, this time she would have to make some changes because he no longer trusted her. This is a modern teaching of that ancient story between Israel and her God. Now Israel would have to rebuild trust, to be reconciled for her sin, and to receive total forgiveness from the groom so that he wouldn't constantly bring it back to her. Now you saw how this related to Israel, right? How he didn't know, that Israel didn't know whether, Miriam, you were going to say something?
Whether Moses was coming back or not from the mountain.
Exactly. And how they built a golden calf. They went to their former lover. It's amazing how when you put it into context of today, how true it is.
Right.
Our Creator truly loves Israel, his bride. And here in Vayakhel Pekudei, we would see how the people understood what they had done and how they wanted to make it right. They brought so much. They worked and worked and worked, and they brought so much to build the Mishkan. And it says they came and they brought and they came and they brought. Moses had to finally tell them to stop. They all gave it with a glad and willing heart. That's a true relationship. When we want to give to our spouse more than we want to receive from them, that comes out of true love, after accepting reconciliation. When we are reconciled after an argument and we come back to them, this is called, and we make things right, this is called doing teshuvah. It's not about coming back to a religion, it's coming back to a relationship with our Creator, returning to our first love. The only way to be forgiven by the Creator is through a sincere acknowledgement from the heart, not through sacrifices or religious practices by which we have destroyed the truth. Sometimes we think, oh, if I do this, this, and this, God is going to forgive me. If I get up on the right side of the bed and I put on my right shoe first, or if I say all these prayers first thing in the morning, or if I give this up, I'm going to give up wine. I'm never going to drink wine again. We make a decision about some practice that we think that we have to give up. That's not what God is asking us.
It's so much like, the idea, the pagan idea which it's with us still, but of having to appease God, appease his anger, etc. And it's not about appeasing him. It's the same as the idea of a husband and wife. When there's a problem, it's not that they, when somebody's been hurt or cheated on, whatever, it's not appeasement. It's returning to the love that they had.
Exactly. And we'll never truly know, we can never truly know another person, because honestly, we never truly know ourselves.
Right.
It's a constant process of learning. And we have to fight the religious drug addicts of our day, the drug addicts of this day. And it's in every area, like you said before, in the educational system, in the medical system, in the pharmaceutical system, and all the systems. Yeshua said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And what is this truth? The truth is what God has given us.
Right.
The truth that he handed us on Mount Sinai. The truth is everything that he represents. And what is true freedom? It's not about being libertine. In the Satanic Bible, it says, "Do as thou wilt." Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it's not about doing whatever we want. Frank Sinatra sang, "I did it my way." Well, it's not about doing things our way. God gives us the freedom, but may our way be in sync with his way. And true freedom means that we're responsible, that we care about others. We don't have to gain anyone's favor. We don't have to behave in a way that it's only to please others, because that's a facade. I know when I got married, I was playing a role. I had no idea about what a relationship was. And it was a disaster. You can't play games. We're the only one we need to please is really our God. The Creator is a loving Father. He wants the best for us. He's on our side, and we can trust him. We can trust exactly what he's written, and not to trust man. Who do we trust? We need to trust him.
Yeah.
So that was a message that he gave us 6 years ago.
Wow, it's great. It's like boundaries are not, maybe there's a better word than boundaries, but loving boundaries are the basis of the real meaning of security in life. Like security it's not hampered by boundaries, it's enhanced. Like even freedom within boundaries is more of true freedom than just the chaos that could result when you have no boundaries. You see that in all the art forms, the idea of splashing a canvas, and saying that that's art, or music, where you throw something, a gong on the floor and it's recorded. I mean, chaos is not the way of not the harmony of the universe.
Exactly.
We use a new agey way, but there is
No, but the Torah begins with that.
Huh?
The Torah begins with that. He took tohu vavohu,
Yeah.
and he turned it into order.
Chaos is not of God.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in the world today. Chaos in every area.
Yeah.
The medical system is in chaos.
Right.
The educational system is in chaos. Governments are in chaos. People are rising up everywhere. There's no more order. And sadly, the only one who's going to be able to do anything about it is the Creator of the universe. And he's the only one who's going to be able to introduce himself to all the nations of the world. He chose us as a people, but our own people right now are in chaos. You look at Israel, people are rebelling in the streets. We have a government that's corrupt. People are rebelling because they want to change the entire judicial system. The judicial system is God's system. When I heard a man say that Israel doesn't have a constitution, he's wrong. Our rabbi always told us the Constitution of Israel are the 10 Commandments. God handed them to us at the very foundation of our people, of our nation. He formed the nation. And our nation constantly wants to be like the other nations. Instead of being a light to them, we're trying to be like them. And it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
And I pray that more people will soon open their eyes so that we will be able to stay his wrath. Because what we're seeing happening in the world is not, all these earthquakes and diseases. And I hear more and more people sick and dying. And we hear of earthquakes. These are the signs of the times, and we've been foretold these by our own prophets. So we need to start doing what's called teshuvah, not running back to Orthodox religions, because religions separate and divide people. What puts us together is a relationship with the only creator of the universe for all nations, all people. The Torah is meant for all nations, all people. And that's the beauty of these teachings.
Yeah.
Any last words before we say goodbye for this? Goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
I'm so
Goodbye.
glad we had this time
Together. It's
Good.
true. I love that song.
I
I'm so
know.
glad. I look forward to this time together.
Yeah.
Really, it's very special.
Well, let's hear the verse. Goodbye, let our hearts call it a day.
I don't remember it.
What the song, the
Carol Burnett. Yeah, I don't remember
I'm
how.
so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. The rest I don't know. Da da dee da dee da dee.
Before the party's over.
Da da dee da da, and say good night or goodbye.
Goodbye.
It's beautiful.
But that one, goodbye, it comes from a different one.
That's
Goodbye.
from the.
That's good night. That's from the Sound of Music.
Sound of Music.
When the children are all
Yes,
getting
yes.
ready to go. Good night. Yeah, that's what it was from. Exactly. But music is very, very special, very powerful.
Yeah.
And given to us. And they say that there's music in the heavens.
Right. Music
Yeah.
of the spheres.
The music of the spheres. Jerry, are you ready to read the Aaronic benediction?
The music of the what? The spheres?
Yeah.
How do you spell that? Spheres.
SPH.
What are the spheres?
The heavens, the air above. I don't know.
Why do you call it spheres?
It's probably short for atmosphere.
Maybe
No.
it's
Well,
a
it could be
word that
something.
they use when.
No, it's not short for atmosphere. Atmosphere is one of the spheres.
No, it could be a word that means something. A sphere. It could mean something. Anyhow, we'll read this here.
More homework.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yes.
May it be thy will, Lord our God and God of our fathers, that this blessing which thou hast commanded Kohanim to pronounce upon the people of Israel may be a perfect blessing, forever free from stumbling and iniquity. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu bigdushasoy shel Aaron, v'tzivanu levarech et amo Yisrael be'ahavo. Yavorechecha Adonai v'yishmorecha. Yoel Adonai ponov elecha v'chuneka. Yiso Adonai ponov elecha v'yosem lecha shalom. V'samu et shemi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani arvorachem.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. And may we shine as he shines upon us. May the Lord lift his countenance upon us and give us shalom. So shall they put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. May we be blessed. May we have peace. May we have health. And the more we study and read the Torah, these things will just come as a natural consequence if we obey. So I wish you all
Amen. Amen.
amen, amen. So have a wonderful rest of the night. I wish you Shabbat Shalom. And next week, God willing, we will do Vayakhel, a new book, Leviticus. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. You're welcome. Good night.
Night, Brian.